Maybe I'm just... Okay, so welcome everybody. Hello. Welcome to this webinar on pastoralism and grasslands, science and policy for regenerative rangeland management. It's being brought to you by IAP, the Inter-Academy Partnership, in collaboration with ESAC, the Mongolian Academy of Sciences, and the Kenyan National Science Academy. My name is Peter McGrath, and I'm the coordinator of IAP in the Secretariat Office in Trieste, Italy. IAP itself is the global network of academies of science, medicine, and engineering with some 150 members around the globe. IAP and its members work together to provide independent expert advice on issues relating to science, technology, and health. I'll now introduce our partners in this webinar. First of all is ESAC, the European Academy's Science Advisory Council. ESAC is a voice of independent science advice that mobilizes Europe's leading scientists to guide EU policy for the benefit of society. It serves as IAP's regional network for Europe and represents 28 national science academies from the European Union member states, along with Norway, Switzerland, and the UK. The Mongolian Academy of Sciences was founded by decree of the Presidium of the Great Hurul, or Great Assembly of the Mongolian People's Republic in 1961. Its members are elected at its General Assembly, and it has a special policy to encourage the activity of young scientists. And finally, the Kenyan National Academy of Sciences was founded in 1983. It is also a learned non-political body with the fundamental aim of cooperating and collaborating with the Kenyan government, other scientific organizations, and the general public in the mobilization of the entire scientific community in Kenya, and for the promotion of scholarly application of all aspects of science, technology, and innovation for Kenya's national development. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the IAP YouTube channel in the coming days. I request you to introduce yourselves in the chat so that we have an idea of who is here, who we're talking to. And note that we also intend to provide time for questions from the audience towards the second half of this webinar. So please have those ready to put in the chat and we'll do our best to get to them. At this point, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's webinar, Thomas Elmqvist. Amongst other positions Thomas holds, he is a full professor at the Stockholm Resilience Center in Sweden and the Environment Program Director for ESAC. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter, for that introduction, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I really look forward to learn a lot during this webinar, both around challenges but also opportunities when it comes to pastoralism and grasslands. And the reason why we're organizing this is, as you have seen in the poster and in the invitation, is that next year in 2026, it will be the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralism. And this has been designated by the UN General Assembly on the initiative of the Mongolian government and the Mongolian Academy of Sciences. And we thought that this would be a very appropriate time to organize a webinar to see what the global research community and Academy of Sciences around the world could contribute with and how research could link up with practitioners when it comes to forge a more sustainable management of grasslands around the world. We have an excellent set of speakers to address this, representing regions around the world, Europe, Central Asia, and Africa. And excuse me, after the four presentations, we will have a moderated discussion among the panelists. And then, as Peter said, we will end with inviting you, the audience, also to ask questions. The whole webinar will take approximately 1.5 hours. But before we start with the speakers, we will watch a video introducing the International Year of Rangeland and Pastoralism. And this is the official video for this designated year in 2026. So please, Moses, if you could start the video.
Yes, give me a disappeared. Disappeared on my screen. Give me a second. Just a moment. Okay, here we go. Share sound.
Okay, so that was the introduction to this year, and we will start now with listening to Dr. Osolja Valko, and she's the head of scientific secretariat and scientific advisor of the Center for Ecological Research and Institute of Ecology and Botany in Hungary. And Ursula will present biodiversity conservation of European grassland challenges and opportunities. So please, Ursi.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for the introduction, and thank you very much for this great opportunity to present my insights and the current state of research on European grasslands. Of course, it's not easy in 10 minutes, so I will try to give you a general overview of the beauty of these ecosystems. European grasslands are very important for maintaining the species and landscape level biodiversity in our continent, and a lot of European species, animals and plants as well, are specialist species confined to grasslands, and a lot of endemic species are only occurring in grasslands. And for grasslands, we really need people maintaining them by grazing or mowing. Grassland is very important for animal husbandry, but animal husbandry is also very important for the grasslands. And of course, the society benefits from grasslands in many ways by ecosystem services such as biomass production, climate regulation, pollination. And we will hear a lot about it, but of course, the traditional land use practices and ecological knowledge contribute to our cultural heritage related to grasslands. Many of us think about, when we hear about biodiversity records, we think about tropical rainforests, because on larger spatial scales, these are the ecosystems harboring the most species. But it's very interesting that on small spatial scales, for example, on 1 square meter, the highest number of plant species occur in European grasslands. So we need to be very proud of our special grassland ecosystems, especially the ones in the Czech Republic, in Romania, Transylvania, in the Baltic states, and in Scandinavia. They are extremely species-rich ecosystems, and they are the world recorders. Europe has a lot of types of grasslands, so very, very diverse continent in this respect. There are some zonal grasslands, which are treeless because of macroclimatic reasons. There are alpine grasslands, which are treeless because of the short growing season. There are edaphic grasslands and extrazonal grasslands, which are grasslands because of the special soil conditions that prevent the forest growths. And here, it's very important to mention the semi-natural grasslands that are maintained by human land use activities by grazing and mowing and traditional management. So in these pictures, these are just some snapshots, but you can see that Europe has a wide range of diverse grasslands. When it comes to the extent of European grasslands, there is a very nice synthesis in the Grasslands of the World book. And here you can see that Europe still holds a lot of grasslands, and almost 40% of all agricultural lands are grasslands in Europe. And when it comes to the proportion of the original extent, then we can vary, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, because the natural grasslands, the former steppes, experienced a dramatic reduction in their original extent. When it comes to secondary grasslands, they suffered declines in all studied regions, and Eastern and Central Europe can be very proud of their semi-natural grasslands, which are still present in large numbers, but needs protection and management. And you can see that in Western and Northern Europe, the ratio of intensively used grasslands is much larger than semi-natural grasslands. For the management of grasslands, we need humans. We need people who can help maintaining the composition and structure of grasslands. Because of the intermediate disturbance hypothesis, most of the grassland ecosystems need some kind of disturbance, repeated perturbation for their functioning, to remove the litter and to prevent the woody encroachment. And according to a recent analysis, a lot of priority habitat types in the European Union, 63 Natura 2000 habitat types, largely depend on the extensive management by grazing and mowing. So these habitats can exist only if there is proper management for them. And of course, the management regimes need to fit the grassland type and the site conditions. We will talk about two main management types, I guess, in the other presentations as well. One of them is mowing, which is a very important management for a lot of grasslands. The mechanism of mowing is that it alters the competitive environment in grasslands, and it helps a lot of specialist species to cherish and complete their life cycles in the meadows. And it has the vegetation succession towards the woody vegetation. So it's a very important tool to keep the landscape open. And the other very important land use type is grazing, which creates environmental heterogeneity in the grasslands through a lot of mechanisms, by the grazing, biomass removal of the animals, by their trampling, by their defecation, and by their seed dispersal activities. And these mechanisms, grazing and mowing, can keep the biodiversity of the grasslands at its maximum, because there is a unimodal relationship between biomass and species richness, and the species richness is highest at an intermediate level of biomass. And that is why we really need to keep the grasslands managed, because if the biomass decreases or increases, the species richness will decrease. One end of this curve is the extreme decrease of biomass by too intensive management. You can see on the picture that it can be, for example, overgrazing, which can lead to the decrease of species richness, or the intensification of management, or the abandonment of management can also decrease the biodiversity of grasslands. Grasslands are very diverse, but they face a lot of threats. This is also a synthesis from this grassland book, where you can see a lot of threatening factors of European grasslands, from which I would like to mention a few. Abandonment of extensive management is a very important threat, because the extensively kept livestock numbers decreased dramatically in many regions of Europe because of the rural depopulation, and it leads to litter accumulation, encroachment of woody species, and the decrease of biodiversity. The other end is the intensification of management to increase agricultural profit by overgrazing, to frequent mowing, or high inputs of agriculture, which leads to homogenization, decreased biodiversity, and ecosystem services. And also there are a lot of conflicts between agriculture and biodiversity, and between other land uses, because grasslands are treeless ecosystems, often unproductive soils, and it's very easy to convert them to other land uses. So a lot of grasslands have been lost because of conversion to croplands or urbanization. And a lot of green initiatives also threaten grasslands, the installation of large solar parks or tree planting campaigns, which are very good in a lot of ways, but they are really a threatening factor for European grasslands. And that is why we need a lot of policy support for European grasslands. This is just some key insights which I think very important for conserving the grasslands in Europe. So it's very important to support the conservation of knowledge related to the traditional management practices, and support the livelihood and value the knowledge of those communities that maintain the grasslands. We need agri-environmental schemes, because extensive grassland management is less profitable usually than intensive ones, so it needs to be financially compensated, and it needs to provide the flexibility and decrease the bureaucracy for farmers. And we need to support knowledge transfer between regions and knowledge systems and stakeholders, especially given the very accelerating climatic changes that makes the management of grasslands even harder. Another important thing is that grasslands are usually underrepresented in the global and European restoration endeavors and biodiversity targets. We usually talk about forests, wetlands, oceans, and plant blindness is especially true to grassland blindness. A lot of people are not aware of the beauty and importance of grasslands and their importance in carbon capture and storage. This is just a figure which shows that temperate grasslands are very, very important in conserving below ground carbon. And finally, what kind of actions are needed for strengthening the position of European grasslands in the policy arena? It's very important to include grasslands more explicitly in the global and European restoration endeavors, and it's very important to raise the awareness to the beauty and importance of European grasslands, also for the wide society. For this, exposing grasslands in cities and residential areas can be a very important point on the educational level, showing to the public the iconic plant and animal species that live in grasslands, and also to show the high value products, very healthy and very important products, also the meat products and cheese and herbs and honey that come from grasslands, and that can support biodiversity conservation as well. So this was in a nutshell about some challenges and opportunities of European grassland conservation, and thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Orsi. That was a good overview of the challenges and also some of the opportunities in Europe. We'll continue with the next speaker, Tsedempur Batoyen from Mongolia. She's the head of Agrometeorological Division, Information and Research Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology and Environment in Mongolia. And her presentation is Rangeland Health Monitoring and Assessment in Mongolia. So please,
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. My presentation title is Rangeland Health Monitoring and Assessment of Mongolia. And as you know that Mongolia has experienced significant climate changes, with air temperature has increased by 2.5 degrees during past 80 years. And Mongolia has claimed goal under NDC to Paris Agreement to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 22.9. So to reduce national greenhouse gas emission and adapt to impact of climate change are needed. So Mongolia rangelands occupy about 70% of territory and a vital source for climate mitigation and through carbon storage. So it's highlighted that maintaining healthy vegetation and restoring degraded rangeland through the sustainable grazing practices and management, which leads to mitigate greenhouse gas emission. So livestock is the main source of income for Mongolia. It's playing a significant role in its economy and traditional way of life. So livestock numbers increasing greatly. So by 2024, Mongolian livestock reached to 57.6 million. So the livestock numbers greatly increased, especially from 1990. So before this, Mongolia has state cooperation. So in this time, livestock and grasslands in the state. After dismantling this cooperation, livestock is privatized. So a number of livestock greatly increased. So in the next graph, we are showing that ratio of goat and sheep. So the goat numbers significantly increasing because of the Kashmir profit. So in livestock type, almost more than 80% content from sheep and goat. So in Mongolia, grazing pressures greatly increased. So in livestock number comparing to 1989, livestock number increased more than 2 times. So pasture carrying capacity is increased most of area of Mongolia. So the in the next two maps, we are showing that cattle herd distribution in 1990 to 2020. So the cattle number is increasing greatly. So it's mainly in the central of Mongolia and also eastern side of Mongolia because of the rangeland source. So the extensive increase of livestock population also changing the herd of structure and livestock loss of traditional pastoral practices are the main factors contributing to rangeland degradation. So the Mongolian climate is very dry and continental, dry and cold climate. So with this increasing climate change and also increase of livestock number is greatly high impact on rangeland health condition. So the assessment of rangeland health condition in Mongolian species composition changed from the reference state. In about 70% of sites are through 1,500 sites. So in the next map, we are showing that the certification map of Mongolia. So the about 76.9 of Mongolian territory has degraded at different levels. So this increase in the livestock number and percentage of unpalatable species increasing instead of palatable species. Because of the grassland degradation, livestock has lack of lack of fodder. So the livestock weight also is decreasing greatly. We can see that from these graphs. In the recent years, livestock weight is under long-term average. So in this slide, I'm showing that national monitoring of Mongolia. So the first map is Mongolia meteorological networks. We have more than 300 stations and posts. Also, we have rangeland monitoring two types. And one is the 300 sites, station and posts. Another one is the rangeland health monitoring, or the 1,500 sites. And also, we are conducting rangeland pest and rodent monitoring. Also, we have 7 zoometeorological observation posts. In these posts, we are measuring livestock weight and also livestock productivity. And for the monitoring, there are several requirements. We are selecting the sites and the established sites. We are following pre-developed methodology and improved plan, and also observations conducted by qualified observation. So the after observation is noted in the recording observation notebook, and after that, this information is input into database, and this data checked by engineers. So first, vegetation monitoring is in the fenced and unfenced sites. So unfenced sites, of course, we are to try to study biotic and abiotic effects on plants. And for fenced sites, we are studying abiotic effects on plants. So next monitoring is desertification monitoring and rangeland health and also soil parameters and pest and rodents. So this monitoring, we are observing plant species and plant productivity. We are measuring also gap between perennial plants. So every 5 years, we are also conducting soil parameters. And because we are identifying the all species and recording these species, we are prepared the herbarium for new species to identify new species. And Mongolian rangelands divided into 25 ecological sites. So this ecological site groups based on the climate condition and also geography, soil, and plant community features. So for each state, we developed the state and transition model. This model included the plant species for different levels. For example, top level, this one is the non-degraded near the reference site, and through the degradation and grassland using, this species changed into degraded states. So if the plant community is near the reference condition, so this to reach the reference condition, it requires 1 or 3 years, 3 growing seasons. If plant species is severely degraded, it requires more than 10 years. For example, in the second level, it requires 2 to 5 growing seasons. And for example, the class 4 plant communities are changed and lost the key plant species. And this map showing the degradation degree or recovery class in terms of species composition in 2024. So the dark blue is the near the reference state. Orange and red one is the more degraded state. So for example, the red one it requires to reach the reference condition, it requires more than 10 years. So we also calculating pasture carrying capacity. This the main data is the plant measuring plant biomass at 1,500 sites every mid-August with 5 replications. Also, the livestock number is the main input to calculate pasture carrying capacity. This is one example. So the red and orange indicates the grassland pasture carrying capacity exceeded more than 5 times. Yellow shows the grassland carrying capacity exceeded 1 to 3 times, and orange is 3 to 5 times. If red, it corresponds to the more than 5 times pasture carrying capacity. And also the drought means the severe winter condition. So this is the main disaster in Mongolia, livestock hoarding. So we are estimating the drought risk map every October. So in this drought risk map, we are including pasture carrying capacity and also summer condition and winter condition. So this information is most efficient to early preparation for drought disaster.
Serempur, could you please round up, because we will in view of time. So
Time?
could you please round up the presentation and then with a conclusion, and then in view of time?
Yeah. Based on this rangeland health monitoring data, we are published rangeland health national report of rangeland health monitoring 3 times. And challenges. So it's necessary to conduct quantitative and qualitative monitoring of pasture conditions to evaluate current and future conditions to produce scientific research and evidence. So the Namem rangeland soil and network information could be a valuable source for rangeland management. So intensify effects to educate people about the harmful effect of desertification. Also transferring traditional livestock hoarding knowledge to next generations. Also keeping livestock number within the carrying capacity is very important. Also we are planting trees is a crucial strategy in fight against desertification. We are Mongolia launching a nationwide tree planting campaign called 1 billion trees in 2021. So thank you for your attention. This is the end of my slide.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we will come back to a lot of the issues you raised there in our discussion. Thank you very much. I think now we'll had an overview of Europe and Central Asia. Now we will move to a new continent, to Africa. And I will invite Joseph Moses Oleshange. He's working at the Legal and Human Rights Center in Tanzania and winner of the Weimar Human Rights Prize in 2023. His presentation is Protecting Maasai Land Rights in Tanzania. So please, Joseph.
Okay. But I think there is a hand for Moses.
Yeah, Moses, you raised your hand. Do you have it?
Oh yeah, it's a mistake.
Oh,
Okay.
go ahead, Joseph.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, and good morning. And maybe summer from Senate House. In relation to the Maasai land and protection of the Maasai lands, I would want to talk on the subject. We are approaching the 2026 years on rangeland by the UN. But if we try to think among ourselves about the future, and maybe 2026, so much coming to our mind. And so I would wish to use the subject protecting the Maasai pastoralism, and particularly the traditional mobility system. What does this mean, and why should be respected? So initially, I can say, and I'm really happy with the presentation that preceded me about Mongolia and Europe. Almost 4 million people practice traditional pastoralism in Tanzania. And this is, I mean, traditional. So the Maasai, the Barbarics, the Skuma, and different others. And it almost contributes to close to 10% of the national GDP. So it's an economy of the people. But pastoralism can only sustain if it is being practiced by the people in the system that they know. And this is what I was referring when I say, actually, when we say about the mobility. So the Maasai, for example, Barbarics and others practice pastoralism in a way that manage the rangelands through the traditional system. And this is through mobility to allow, like in a seasonal grazing way, to allow forage and of course other regeneration in the rangelands. So this is very important, and it has been tested not necessarily through modern universities, but through traditional historical practices, and it works. This, though, is the fact. Pastoralism, particularly in Tanzania, is facing very serious challenges. When I'm seated here in Tanzania, and when we're approaching 26 years on rangeland, unlike Mongolia, maybe it will be like we are all desiring to see what will happen, because government on constant basis is on a fight against pastoralism, is actually openly fighting pastoralism. So pastoralism is facing challenges in many ways, but mostly fueled by the government policies. So, but particularly I can mention challenges that include, for example, encroachments of the rangeland. And this encroachment can take form of occupation by conservation, occupation by the tourism as a business, farming as another economy. Of course, we might like it, but is in a different way impacting pastoralism and the rangeland, and other growing system like towns and different others. But the major threat is government police that is now fencing what was the traditional rangeland into other uses like conservation. And when I say is not really conservation, is commercial conservation, is a conservation that either take the form of hunting or is fueled by the business interests, which always see pastoralism as a negative and threat to its survival. So this is part of the major challenge facing pastoralism and rangelands in Tanzania. For example, in the recent years, and constantly for the last 5 at least, Maasai and other pastoral group has been facing a constant eviction in the name of biodiversity, in the name of conservation, but for which, if you try to test science, the answer should have been actually pastoralism preserve better the rangeland and biodiversity through mobility. And this is why I said we should consider mobility as a solution for some of the challenges that we are facing. Because because we are being forced to adopt a kind of pastoralism of a zero grazing. But pastoralism in our traditional system can only work if we move. So some people see nomadic pastoralism as an awkward system, not knowing is a tested mechanism that protects both the land and, of course, biodiversity. And particularly when you take the fact that the pastoralists, for example, in Tanzania, practice the system in a very dry ecosystem like the northern Tanzania, which is actually known as northern Tanzania dryland. So it's known as a very dry area. That the only business you can work for better is through the pastoralism. So, so now trying to ensure that the pastoralism survives, which of course is a very, challenge, because, when the government, yes, we have some laws, for example, that led to pastoralism, but, government enforce laws only if it affects pastoralism. So is the conservation law, it will be enforced to the maximum and beyond it. Is that law, for example, protect the land right of the pastoralist, it will always not being enforced. And because the pastoralists own land, for example, in a collective way, not in a what I can say, a capitalist individual property is a collective right. Everyone always sees that land as an idle land, available for encroachment. And when, for example, because I also talk about protection of the Maasai lands, so we try to protect through our customary systems. When it is encroached, we try, for example, to use the legal system. But the challenge is we use the legal system that was crafted without considerations of a collective mind of the pastoralist. It was crafted in a mind of bourgeoisie system, like a private land, which in the Maasai system is a norm. So including our judicial system is positioned in a way to interpret about the private right as against the collective right of the people. So it's always difficult to take that as an option or of protecting. So of course we test, but it is really challenging to take an option, trying to enforce traditional system in the court that do not know anything about that system. So it is challenging, but I think the most important things we should remember is, though there is that challenge, many people in millions still depends on pastoralism for the survival, for their livelihoods, to take their kid to school and everything else. But now, because I said about conservation and tourism, now, because someone mentioned here about the pastoralism rangeland also help in carbon regeneration, which now there has been also now a thinking of like monetizing the rangeland through the carbon offsetting, which is not coming to solve essentially the problem facing pastoralism and the rangelands, but fueling the already ailing system, because it again end up capitalizing the land use other than returning what is being lost. So I can also say about now we have the people practicing pastoralism. We have a not so much friendly environments about pastoralism. from, and I can understand one things, in a capitalist system, they want money from anything. And it's difficult for the state, for example, put taxation into the pastoralist economy unless it's the day you take for a market, and then they are not happy with that. So the only way is to try to strangle the system entirely, because they see it not beneficial to them. They disregard the fact that 4 million people in a country, it is contributing already 7% of the GDP, maybe or 7 or 10, maybe they want more. And if they can't, then they try to strangle it entirely. So I can say, of course, with that cloud, of course, I think there are still options. And one is, I think, going to 2026, for example, in the year of rangelands, it will be sort of a way of awakening the minds to understand pastoralism and the rangelands is a good system for land management, is a viable system of economy for the people and their livelihoods, and learning from others. For example, when you see what happens, for example, in some other countries, maybe Mongolia and different others, about what the pastoralist contributes, what is the beauty about the rangeland. And I think is also an opportunity for us to learn. And I'm referring as a country, not necessarily as people, because we know how we can use our traditional system to make sure that the rangeland is managed, the coexistence is valued and enforced, and pastoralism as a livelihood is respected, enforced, and given a due recognition that I think it deserves. And more particularly, I think I will add maybe my last words in understanding mobility. When people, the nomadic pastoralism, which is not only in Tanzania, it is in Kenya, it is mostly in the desert. If you go to almost the Middle East countries, North Africa, the only business you can bet it can survive in a very complicated environment, maybe going kilometers for water, maybe traveling for 2 days, is pastoralism, either through the camel systems, whether through cows and different others. So mobility of these people is not a threat to the land. It is a way that you can sustain the land use. Is the way you can allow the land to regenerate. Is the way you can, many plants grow because of the impact or the positive effect of the pastoralism in the area. So I think this is what I can say for now, and maybe I will be happy for the question later.
Thank you so much, Joseph. You brought up some very important points. I'm sure we will gonna discuss intensively later on. I just want to call on to see if Dorothy Amwata is online. We had some problems with the connection. Dorothy, are you there? Apparently not. So then this means that we probably will not have that presentation. Dorothy was supposed to give a presentation on climate smart pastoralism in the African rangelands, a perspective from Kenya. But we're lucky to have the insight from the African continent anyway, from Joseph. So thank you very much, the speakers. I think there are some important reflections, and I learned a lot listening to your presentations, but I think maybe we could start reflecting on whether you think there are common challenges, given that there is so much ecological diversity and social cultural diversity. Rangelands are really intertwined social ecological systems. But do you think there are some common challenges, and also where the solutions might point in the same direction, and where some sort of policy framework would be really important? Of course, climate change is something affecting all rangelands all across the globe, but in different ways and in different contexts. So I would invite you to reflect on if you think there are these common challenges and how we should address them in that case. So who will start? Orsi, you would like to start?
Yes, maybe. Thank you very much, Thomas. I really enjoyed these very interesting presentations, and for me, the most interesting point is that even though the grasslands and rangelands face some different challenges, so for example, in Mongolia and in Africa, the too intensive management can be very problematic, and in Europe, in many regions, the disappearance of the management is the problem. But these are rooted in common problems. So this extensive type of management and the traditional way of management really needs the support, and then it needs a very complex policy support, I think, because this livelihood is, for example, in Europe, in many regions, disappearing, and I think it's very, very important to support these communities and to make this livelihood, the management of grasslands, as a viable and long-term solution. So I think this is common, even the problems are different, but in all regions which we heard of, I see this as a common point.
Mm. Thank you. But Wien, do you have any reflections on common challenges? Serempure?
Yes, in Mongolia, livestock numbers greatly increasing. So the socio-economic changes, due to socio-economic changes, pasture lands still remaining state owned. So livestock is privatized. So these numbers giving a lot of pressure on grassland. And also the traditional knowledge is livestock hoarding knowledge is getting worse. Yeah.
That's a good point. And Joseph, do you have reflections on this?
Okay, on the two questions that I'm seeing, or
whether you think there are the common challenges across rangelands in different parts of the world?
of course they do. If you try, for example, to digest about, for example, what happened in North Africa, for example, what happened in the Middle East, what happened in Latin, for communities that practice pastoralism and the rangeland, there is similarity about what the people face, what are the issues that face the rangeland. One among other is, as the world transformed into kind of different system, then some other trying to maintain the traditional system. It always, one is perception, might be one of them very similar issue happening throughout. Climate change is a very serious, very similar happening throughout. It does not only happen with the Maasai, or for example, with the Somali, or whatever. It happens everywhere. It is real things that impact the rangeland. Of course, some other issue might be not essentially completely similar, but I can admit there are very common issues that face the rangeland throughout. It can happen in Mongolia, it can happen in Latin, it can happen in southern part of Africa.
Thank you. Orsi, you have a response to that?
Yes, just following up the issue of climate change, I absolutely agree that even those countries where it has not been so even in the temperate parts of Europe, even in the oceanic climate change is accelerating very fast. In Hungary, for example, even in the springtime, sometimes the pastures are dried already, and there's nothing for eat for the livestock at the end of the summer. So this will be a very serious issue all over the world, and for this we would really need knowledge from other regions and knowledge from the agricultural sectors and the people from different scientific fields, and the farmers and the managers should really think together how to solve this, because the livestock will not have enough food for eating. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I think there is like a common reflection here that next year could be very important to bring up rangelands and grasslands on the global agenda, to make it much more known about these common challenges, not only with climate change and the role grasslands have for biodiversity and carbon, but also that in most regions traditional and local knowledge is eroding, and this is a very serious issue. When it comes to the practitioners and their role, I know we have one question around practitioners and pastoralists and their role. So I would invite Salt Molnar, perhaps, if you want to speak up and put your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for these three wonderful presentations. I really enjoyed how we traveled from Europe to Mongolia and then to Eastern Africa to Tanzania. Yes, so a common challenge. So I'm a botanist, vegetation ecologist by training, and I'm working on traditional knowledge of pastoralists in Central Europe, in Mongolia, Iran, and Kenya. So I have some cross-cultural comparison, which shows that the challenges are really globally very similar, because the drivers, because of the practices herders and pastoralists apply, are globally very similar. We have a study that shows that pastoralists always look for the livestock, and the livestock drives their behavior. For example, the mobility is more or less a copy of the traditional movement of large herbivores, and the pastoralists just simply culturally repeat these seasonal movements. So I think challenges are much more similar than we expect. And traditional knowledge is not simply eroding, but is it eroded by government policies and actual the schooling system. And thank you, Joseph, for emphasizing the capitalist views of the governments, which is really in opposition to pastoralist views of nature and human-nature relationship. So my question is that how we could bring in pastoralist voices to these discussions, because what Joseph and also Orsi said was coming from pastoralists, because we are working with them, but how we can bring them into these global policy discussions for let it be the IVRRP, the rangeland and pastoralist year next year, or other processes like IBES and CBD. So what is your experience of bringing in pastoralists themselves into these discussions?
Who want to start? Joseph?
Okay, maybe I can. And I think there are several questions, by the way, also in the chat. And maybe I can respond all of them together. And Molnar, you just mentioned something which, of course, helped me respond with one of the questions. When we speak about mobility, doesn't mean the grasses must be over, and so we are on a run. No, because we have been practicing this business over centuries, and then with the traditional knowledge, what has happened in the last maybe 150 years. So we are mobile people because it is many things together. So it's not only the issue about the grasses and water. There are diseases. If, for example, I can say in my village in Ngorongoro, there are common disease that happens in the highlands only. And then there is malignant fever that happen only between December and April in the plains. So how can we survive of the two? The malignant is very fatal, so we cannot test that. So we take our livestock to the highlands from December to April to avoid the disease. Then when the Nigana, they call the East Coast fever, start taking a very different shape in May, we run to the plain because it is not there. So one is trying to protect the pastoralism. So at least we have the knowledge into that. We don't need any professor to tell us how this works. We know it ourselves. We are at least, every master is a professor of that. And then you need, of course, and you said something very good about, what happened with the large movement of the wildlife. So as the Maasai move back to the plains, the wildebeest will move the west, then to the Maasai Mara in Kenya, for those who are aware of that. So it will be a back and forth movements of both the large wildlife and the people, because both of them has been coexisting in this rangeland for years, for centuries. If an animal's know, definitely, it is something, not always all the wildlife are, we can think they don't have intelligence, but they move on a seasonal way because they know what works better for them. And so mobility is very crucial to avoid many things. So one is disease, but again, to allow regeneration. When I say, because someone told me the question, what is the relation between the mobility and and protecting the land? So it is important, because if you stay in one area, you overgraze, then maybe the place that you are living, it can generate other unpalatable, for example, grasses, species that are of no use to pastoralism or wildlife. So you make the land entirely useless. So we move to manage the resources. Is very important, at least to understand that. But again, someone asked the question, and I will start respond briefly. Now, with the policy of the government, and of course, the conservation, I think the question was framed that way. How can we survive with the now privatization and conservation restrictions? My opinion is, this wildlife has been there before colonialism, before any government at least existed in what is East Africa, if I speak of this context. So if it was possible then, it is still possible now. We should not kill the pastoralism. We should, if at all there is anything we can kill, is the mindset that try to separate people from what they have coexisted for centuries. It is still possible, and I think we should try to do it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think one important issue for this international year will be to discuss different governance model, perhaps some polycentric governance model for rangelands that would include important stakeholders. And so this, I mean, all three presentations have really emphasized the importance of the practitioners, of the pastoralists being leading the development of and the sustainable management of the rangelands. So I think now we will turn to some of the questions from the audience. We had for Dr. Tsirimpure Batuyan a question about the tree planting program and to what extent in Mongolia that would interfere with the grazing. What are the effects overall on quite a massive tree planting, and would that be in areas that previously been covered by trees? So Dr. Batuyan.
Yes, Mongolia is greatly planting trees. Now, by now, we plant 50 million trees in the degraded areas of Mongolia. So this planting trees is continuing to restore.
And how would it interfere with the grazing?
Grazing?
And rain? How would it interfere? And would it be all across Mongolia, this tree planting program?
Yeah, across Mongolia, especially in the degraded areas.
Mm. So yeah, and there was also another question for you on promising adaptive grazing strategies for coping with increased drought and extreme weather in rangelands. So what's the strategy in Mongolia when it comes to coping with increased droughts?
Drought?
Yeah.
Yeah, in Mongolia, climate change very severe. So increasing drought intensity and also severe wind intensity. So we are developing some early warning informations to reduce negative impacts. So, for example, early warning for drought and also severe wind risk. So we are producing risk maps for management actions.
Orsi, you have a response there?
Yes, just a quick response about tree planting and drought. So tree planting is very good for carbon capture and storage and for the large biodiversity goals, but we need to be careful not to plant trees in those regions which are naturally treeless. In Hungary, it's often problematic that we plant trees in very arid regions, and the evapotranspiration of the trees make these already dry regions even drier. So this is an important note, I think.
Yeah, thank you. That's an important. We have a few hands up, so maybe I call on Divine Neocam to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for this very important meeting at the very important moment we are in. My name is Neocam Divine. I'm the global I'm the founder and executive director of Climate Smart Agriculture Network Global. Greetings from Columbus, Ohio. I'm a Cameroonian by nationality. Yeah, a couple of years back, we had a very important event organized between IRRI and my network, where we actually invited young people from Eastern Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. It was being hosted in Kenya, where we invited pastoralists, young people. We're trying to see how we can mainstream young people in this range in this process. So we came up with the AYPI, which I've posted in the chat, which was very, very important in the sense that the main idea was to see how we could leverage on the existing opportunities across the pastoralism framework. So I want to ask, how can we really, with this, I don't know if it's a ETAP or how can we work together, because we are widely spread. We are widely spread, and I want to inform all of us that I'm actually part of those who designed the SDGs with Amina Mohammed back in 2012, 2014, who is the Deputy Secretary General at the moment. I just want to ask, with the outreach we have over 176 countries we work in, and 76 centers of excellence, which are primary, secondary, tertiary, and TVETs. So I want to know how we can collaborate to make sure that the voices of the voiceless are heard, because some of these pastoralists don't have access to internet because they're in the field. So how do we make sure that we actually take this message back to the grassroots level? So that's really what I want to see, how we can work together. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Divine. Yeah, I think that's an important. How do you actually involve pastoralists in the work? And I think that would be an important issue for this international year 2026 to address and come up with mechanisms. But if Joseph or Orsi or others would have ideas on how do we involve them in, and how do we give them a voice?
Should I say something?
Yeah, Joseph, please.
I think there is a way, always. And I can give one example, and I think it's very important for this to happen, because if we are able to make the real voices from the real people practicing pastoralism, other than people always purporting to be representing them, then we'll know for a fact what is really facing pastoralism and what options would the pastoralist has. So I think is very important going 2026, trying to think a way to bring the real voices from the ground, either from Mongolia, either from Somali, either from whatever, and particularly in a very diverse way. If I try to watch a film about cameling in North Africa, you feel like this is very terrible. But if I try to digest it well, we are always being told you are living a terrible life. So it's not terrible, is their system. So you better listen to them, and you'll understand why these people has to live this way, despite what you can think is a very challenging system, either because of dry systems, for example, in a desert, in different others. So how can we? I think we should try to collaborate together and bring the real voices of the people. I think maybe we can organize some sort of a movement to bring the real common people who can bring a sense, not necessarily, when I say professors, please don't quote me as I'm against lending people, no. But it is always important to try to think in a common person, because this is the only way you can address the challenges facing the common people. So I think we should really take this serious and bring their voices and into the global scale, not someone seated somewhere and say, maybe this is what really happens. It is not. They know better what happened with them. Yeah.
So maybe this webinar could send a strong message to perhaps the Mongolian government and others involved in the International Year of rangelands and pastoralism, that this is really a very high priority and important issue to find new mechanisms of involving practitioners and pastoralists in this process throughout the year. Orsi or Batwin, do you have any reflections on this?
Maybe just a short reflection. I absolutely agree, and I think that the other way is also very important, that we need to show to the wide society that grasslands, rangelands, pastoralist communities are very, very important for a lot of reasons. And for this, there are very good tools which a lot of us already practice, and I think that we can together put together something very, very nice in this sense as well.
Good, and I see there are lots of discussion in the chat, and Zolt suggested we should, to a much larger degree, invite pastoralists to conferences. And actually, there's one coming up in Cairo, the Inter-Academy Partnerships having a General Assembly in Cairo in December, where we will have a session on grasslands, rangelands, and pastoralism, and we will try hard to invite practitioners from different continents to give them a voice and listen to their concerns. I think it's important to have this dialogue between the research community and the practitioners and have it very lively. We are sort of winding down a bit. There is a question from Dr. Germ L. So I will give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you very much. In fact, when we are trying to look at the pastoralism, I'm one of the pastoralist communities who are living in the northern part of Kenya and the southern part of Ethiopia. Now, our mobility comes normally all the times. Sometimes when there's a lack of rainfall in one area, maybe in Kenya, there's a rainfall maybe in Ethiopia, we are moving as far as Ethiopia. When there is rainfall in Kenya, we are moving as far as Kenya. And therefore, we can say that there's a lot of factors that normally brings the mobility. Now, one of the factors can be maybe, as been said already, that is a disease. Maybe an outbreak of a disease can make the area, people moving from one place to another area because of that reasons. Others is because of pastures, maybe others because of water. You see that, especially if you look at the Gabra community who are living in the northern part of Kenya, occupying a very big land, which is just like, for example, 3 countries like Rwanda, Burundi, and Seychelles. Now, they are moving the whole of this area. One of the things that make the people move from one place to another one is sometimes hostility, whereby there is normally tribal wars between one tribe and another tribe. So people are moving from one place to another place because of this reason. And therefore, I was asking that during the time, for example, like conferences, now the people who are the pastoral communities are supposed to be invited so that they can become the participatory in the field, so that they can know whatever is being discussed about it. If, for example, it's a matter of growing of trees, now you see like most of the areas which is occupied by pastoral communities, a large area, it will not maybe easy for them to grow all the trees in the same places or maybe different places. So there's a lot of things that matters. So we need to involve the stakeholders, the pastoral communities, in normally discussing these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Germ. Important contributions. I think we are starting to wind up. So I think I will give the floor to our speakers, Josef, Tserempurev, and Orsi, if you have any last reflections, messages, and how you think this webinar contribute to the International Year of Rangeland and Pastoralism? Joseph, you want to start?
Okay, thank you. And I think I will not say beyond, for example, what we have seen in these charts, like what should happen to really bring the voices of the people and the pastoralists into this discussion. I think I will share the idea that, well, I said, which can be either bringing the real pastoralist in conference, not necessarily to co-present with the, scholars, but also to means for them to present a critique against the scholarly thinking. And maybe from that, we'll have a way forward, which might, because scholar is very good, is researching, is putting mind into it. But I said earlier, there are so many professors who have never gone to school because they have been practicing something over years. So if we bring them together and then we go somewhere, as Mona has said, and either co-present, but alternatively, getting sort of another critical assessment, maybe we'll get something we never thought we can achieve. So my take, I think we should push for that to happen, and I think it would be amazing.
Thank you, Joseph.
Otherwise, I'm really happy for this.
Great. And Orsi, some final reflections?
Thank you. I'm very, very happy with this webinar. I heard a lot of very interesting perspectives, and I think we should continue talking to each other. And I really enjoyed also the great ideas in the chat. So we should also remember those. And I absolutely agree with the conclusion of Joseph that we really need to make happen to hear the voices of those people who maintain the rangelands. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tserenpurev, your final reflections?
Thank you very much for inviting this webinar. Yeah, I learned many things from different countries. Yeah, thank you very much. We can keep collaboration. Yeah.
And Mongolia will have a very important role, of course, in initiatives during next year. So with that, I want to thank the speakers very much. I learned tremendous by listening to your presentations. It's been very exciting. And also thank the audience for being very engaging. We have so many questions. We're only able to answer a few of them, but we will document this, and this whole webinar is recorded. So there will be some follow-up. But with that, I will again thank you all and hand over to Peter.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Thank you also to Ursula and Joseph and Tserenpurev for the presentations and engaging in the discussion. I think also to all the participants, those who raised their hand, put their questions in the chat. I think we've had a very good discussion. I was trying to jot down a number of challenges that have been put on the table, if you like. The last one, I think, was from Joseph, summing up there. How do we get the discussions really going? How do we find a mechanism, if you like, for hearing the voices of the pastoralists and the indigenous knowledge? You said something, Thomas, I think it could be a high priority during the international year that is coming up, to sort of find new mechanisms, new policy mechanisms of engaging these voices and helping them frame the new policies. Is there something sort of outside the box of obviously as Joseph has also explained, the traditional mechanism of the the government that has been set up in the international system of governments, if you like, versus the more traditional methods. There's a sort of conflict of interests in a way that is very typical across not just the African system, but also in Europe and Mongolia, etc. How can we break those boundaries and get everybody working together? Maybe this is the challenge for IAP. Thomas, you mentioned the conference we have coming up in Cairo in December. And this is an opportunity, I think, for us to walk the walk and talk the talk. Let us consider really how we can start the ball rolling and get moving on this sort of philosophy of engagement and co-creation of the policies that we really need. I mean, Ursula, you've emphasized the importance of grasslands and rangelands for carbon sequestration, for biodiversity loss, and so on. There's a lot that needs to be done. I think this webinar has helped us put a lot of those issues on the table. The answers we don't have yet, but it's early days. But I think we can start as IAP and our network of academies to really start thinking and framing these issues. Thank you also to those participants who've offered to connect, asking how we can collaborate. We'll be in touch, I'm sure, as we move along. This webinar, as we said at the beginning, was not intended to be a one-off, but really a kickstart of activities that will take us through at least until the end of 2026. So with that, thank you all again, and let us close here.
Thank you.